Wow, wow, Dustin Pickering. Welcome to the book show, the one student, one book, one author mantra, the global readers circle, the ultimate podcast that is designed to inspire and motivate a lifelong learner and committed reader out of every global person. On behalf of our community and our global family, I am so happy to introduce Dustin Pickering. Also, Dustin, thank you for honoring our Ivy. How do you feel?
I'm excited. I can't wait to answer your questions and talk about books and being a lifelong learner.
Wow, wow. Well, let's talk about you. Who is author Dustin Pickering? Tell us about you.
Well, I have published, I think, 14 books of poetry and a novella called Be Not Afraid of What You May Find, as well as a fairy tale called The Velvet Robe. And I'm basically based in Houston, Texas, and I'm mostly popular in India because that's where my main publisher is located. But I do seem to reach across internationally to, you know, places like Nigeria. I've got some people out of Greece.
Wow,
All kinds of places like really have a lot of following in a lot of places. So it's
wow,
really great to reach out further to other audiences.
wow. Amazing. Awesome. Awesome. So let's talk about your reading lifestyle. Let's talk about your journey as a reader. When did you find your love for reading? And would you describe yourself as a lifelong learner? At what point did you become an intentional reader?
I started reading young. I was put in a program as a young person whose family situation was not very healthy. I was put in an early learning program, and basically from that program, I was mentored by a lady in Mississippi, where I was located, to read and to basically learn some basic things. And I learned to enjoy reading from her, and I think it's that was maybe when I was about 5 years old. I really developed a love for reading, and
Mm.
gradually, I was introduced to new writers, new thinkers, new people throughout my journey. I'm mostly an sort of like a self taught person, and I
Wow.
just love the art of discovering new things and new ideas, new music, even, and new anything culturally new
Yeah.
and fresh that I've not been exposed to before. So I went from reading a lot of child's literature later on to getting into poetry about the age of, I'd say, about 14 or 15. I started reading poetry. I'd always written poetry because it was something that came natural to me, but I didn't start
Mm.
reading serious poetry until I was
Mm.
about 15. And that started with Sylvia Plath, the famous American modernist confessional poet. And I
Um,
just I fell in love with literature from there. I read her novel Bell Jar, and I just went from there to just all kinds of different other authors and other writers, and just really absorb everything I can, from the sciences to from psychology to quantum physics, just whatever I can find
mm.
that challenges my mind. So definitely, I would say lifelong learner because I'm addicted. I'm
Wow.
definitely addicted to just new information, new ideas. My brain craves this stuff, so it's like I can't really help it. Challenging my mind all the time to think differently and to correct my fundamental assumptions about reality and so
Mm.
forth.
Wow. Amazing. Amazing. Dustin Pickering. I like you to talk about the person you would have been. What or where do you imagine your life if you were not this private, like you said, a private reader, a private person when it comes to your learning? What would you say about your growth? What would you say about the life you're currently leading if you were not this lifelong learner? What would you say?
I would probably be a dullard. I find that people that don't read are very boring, in my opinion. I don't mean to be judgmental, but a lot of people I've talked to, some people have, a lot of the people that don't read and don't read fluidly, are boys. A lot of them are boys. I got pushed around a lot in school growing up because I love to read. I just got picked on quite a bit, and I think that's a common motif in a lot of movies and stuff, where the kid that was bullied learns to read and grows up and becomes a fascinating person of some kind. And I think it would just it enriches the idea of the thought of reading and doing reading enriches my worldview, enriches my life in the sense that I develop meaning for myself. And I think that, that pursuit for me makes me a better person. So without books and without literature, I think, as Nietzsche said, without music, life would be a mistake. I say without the arts in general, without culture, life would be a mistake. And I really feel that deeply that books and pursuit of learning new things makes you a more interesting and intelligent person, a more articulate person, a deeper thinker, and that in and of itself is enriching, even if it doesn't make you monetarily rich. It helps you develop a worldview where you can see the world through your own lens, and it's almost like a superpower in a
Wow.
way. I, in my opinion, that's just
That's
just
your that's
having
your
an
that's your
original
superpower.
view of
That's your
life.
superpower. Wow, Dustin
Yeah,
Pickering. Amazing, amazing, amazing. So let's talk about your journey into authorhood. Let's talk about the first time you became an author. What problems were you trying to solve? What was in your head?
the
What were
new
you trying
book.
to do?
So my new book is Crime of the Extraordinary. It's poetry. It's available on Amazon, and I was trying to pursue my usual abstract expressionist style of poetry and my bare bones kind of aphoristic style, psychologically probing style that I did in Salt and Sorrow. Combine that with
Yeah,
my more abstract expressionist views, and try to use a lot of like contemporary concerns like climate change and so forth,
yeah,
and the insect, what they call the insect apocalypse, and the fact that our
mm,
world is kind of in a way shrinking
yeah,
in so many ways. Like, I mean, there's so much suffering, but there's also this immense wealth being generated. And so
mm,
it's not specifically a social or political statement I was trying to make, but I was trying to, for my own benefit, develop
yeah,
a sense of what's going on and confront so much of my own doubt concerning this
yeah, yeah.
images and my experiences of things and my view of the world. I call it spiritual ecology because it's my way of looking at the interior life
Mm,
and
mm,
relating it to the exterior life and the human in a collective sense. So, I mean, a lot of
wow.
it had to do with trying to understand the human condition, and my main focus in the book is my own personal experiences, and trying to take poems and break them down to like very basic units. Like, I call them micro poems. Each poem is less than 8 lines, and I think those pack a punch. I think those are really powerful poems, and I think they say a lot more than they actually intend to say. I had a blurb from Sudeep Sen where he quotes one of the poems. He says each poem is an epic essay unwritten, and I think that's what I was aiming to do, is say
Mm,
a lot with very little words, very little, just as much as I could say without giving away the whole the whole kit and caboodle in one statement or one long thing. I would just like to say a few things in my words and not be extremely elaborate, and let the reader take those bare bones and use those bare bones to create their own thought processes. So I try to suggest things in my writing that I hope people come to similar conclusions with one another, and reading these books that I've written. And, it was a very different style than I was after in Salt and Sorrow, which was a Christian humanist work. And in this work, different. I take some of the same, basic bare bones style, but I add to it imagistic references and stuff that I was really playing with stylistics, but also, uh, experimenting with language and trying
Yeah.
to create an atmosphere that would intrigue readers. So multiple, ideas were being kind of played with, but mostly as far as problems and like social or political problems or anything, I don't think I was aiming for that. It sort of pulled out because I've been reading a lot on climate change, and I'm just sort of trying to kind of come to terms with what the human race has created for itself. The
Wow.
world we've created, which is, to me, it's like and I don't know about, where you're located, but here in the United States, and at least in Texas, there's a lot of doubters of climate change, or people that just won't accept that this is the reality that we're facing. And so I'm faced with that a lot. And so it gives me doubts reflecting into my environment and back to my own mind. It sometimes gives me doubts about whether or not this is a serious thing or not. And I think in this book, I was trying to face a lot of that through my
Reality.
images and so forth. So that was one thing that was definitely a very big part of that book, of Crime of the Extraordinary.
Wow. Wow. Amazing. Amazing. Well, if you're streaming this, we've been on to author Dustin Pickering. Author Dustin Pickering who passed for a room full of books. I mean, with over 14 books in his names, and obviously an avid and elliptical reader, a lifelong learner, an inquisitive writer, a researcher. Well, you can't afford to miss Dustin Pickering. Don't forget that just like our tradition is, we would leave his website, his Amazon link. I'm sure, Dustin Pickering, we have your book on Amazon.
Yes.
Okay, we're sure going to leave his Amazon link on a podcast note so you get to read and also share with your friends and family. Well, Dustin Pickering, I'd like you to tell us, where can we find your book? Where is the fastest place to build a rapport with Dustin Pickering? Are you open for mentorship? Are you a coach? What's your strategy to build a rapport with your
You
readers
could
globally?
uh, can you repeat that? It was a little bit of a break in the when you said.
Okay, I said, how do we get to build a rapport with you? Are you
You
open for
reach me on.
mentorship?
You can
Yeah,
reach out
what's
to
the
me on
fastest
Facebook.
way a reader can reach out to you?
Facebook is a good place. My email is desireofdogs@gmail.com. I do like to communicate with people who are, interested in learning more about literature, and I like to talk with people. I do a lot of editing work, and I know I just enjoy conversations and thinking about literature. So yeah, sure. If anybody wanted to reach out to me, my Facebook is Pickering.Dustin. Twitter is Dustin Pickering with just an N at the end and two instead of a G, at Dustin Pickering 2. So those are two places. Instagram, I'm on Instagram with, I believe, Pickering.Dustin is my Instagram. So yeah, just reach out to me on social media or my email. That would be great. I would appreciate that.
Wow, amazing, amazing. Wow, we get to the part of the show where author Dustin Pickering will be naming 10 books, 10 amazing books that made a difference for him, 10 books he would probably recommend, 10 authors he would love to meet, and 10 amazing souls he would love his readers and our streamers globally to have an interest on. Well, Dustin Pickering, I'm sure you're ready to take this challenge.
Absolutely. My first choice would be a book that pretty much revolutionized my life. And it's Friedrich Nietzsche's Thus Spake Zarathustra. It's a wonderful
Mm,
work of philosophy, and it's a good starting point for him. I just love his language. He's very poetic, and his philosophy in general. Once
yeah.
you get kind of addicted to it, it becomes it becomes an obsession if you really get connected with it. And he's very
Wow.
metaphorical in his work, so I really enjoy his work
Wow.
a lot. I recently was
Wow.
exposed to a writer named Maya C. Popa. Her book "Wombed" is the
Mm,
origin of wonder. It's poetry, and
mm,
I'm actually written a review of the book that's going to be published in Los Angeles Review, coming out
wow.
soon. They haven't given me a date yet, but they will pretty soon. And the book is just incredible. She uses etymology to explore mortality and her it's poetry, and it's a wonderful collection of it's just beautiful. I mean, the language is very contemporary, but she goes and explores a lot of interesting thought, and it's beautiful. Then there are two that I would suggest by the Russian novelist Dostoevsky, Crime and Punishment and Notes from Underground. Crime and Punishment actually plays a role in my new collection, Crime of the Extraordinary, which is
Wow.
where I got the title from. The
Wow.
Extraordinary Man Theory. Yeah, it's a really impressive book, and it's thought provoking. And Notes from Underground, I love the concept of anti-heroes, which is where that book comes from. Notes from the
Mm,
Underground is an anti-hero. It's sort of like a a ruffian scholar, I guess a wannabe scholar, and he's kind of like
yeah.
involved with all these little different groups, and he's very nihilistic and antisocial and so forth, and so he's hiding, he's like, kind of in his own bunker. It's really great.
Mm,
It's really great. It's a very small novel, and it's anything by Dostoevsky is beautifully written and thought provoking and full of deep philosophies.
wow.
Another one that I consider to be a place where I learned a lot about poetry, Hayden Carruth's anthology, "The Voice That Is Great Within Us." It's taken from um, I believe a William Carlos Williams poem. The title was taken from that, and it's all kinds of contemporary American poetry of the 20th century. I mean, it's anything from Robert Frost to Charles Reznikoff to his own poetry, Hayden Carruth's own poetry. Just a lot of big names and a lot of smaller names. I got introduced to a lot of poetry I would have not found otherwise. Another one was Sophocles' Oedipus trilogy. I think I just found that to be a riddle of humankind. Like the whole presentation of this story is almost like it's just a riddle to kind of unnerve what with the basis of humanity, like what are we, who are we, wrestling with fate and the destructive forces out there that are out to get us and all this. It's like how he overcomes this and how he falls into the traps and so forth. And I found that to be a very tragic hero kind of story. And I just found the way he presents Sophocles presents it to be very deep and thoughtful. Stefan Malamare's collected poetry, because I just love his way of crafting his poetry, and I think he's got a really great mind in his presentation. He's a French symbolist poet who I think really just captures like metaphysical essences in a really outstanding way. Milton's Paradise Lost, because why not? You know, it's an excellent epic poem, and it captures that age very well. He's an English poet, and his language is just sublime. His use of the sciences of the time is sublime, and it's really captivating story of the fall of mankind through, you know, the sort of the Christian mythology that was he developed of Satan coming to, you know, corrupt Adam and Eve, and he takes that so far and so beautifully. And the language itself is beautiful. There's an Indian poet and humanist and Nobel laureate named Tagore. His Gitanjali is beautiful to me. The language is beautiful. Again, as a poet, I love the literature of this work. And finally, I would say Plato's Symposium, because I think that Socrates is really human in in his presentation in this particular piece. It's very human, as opposed to the a lot of the Socrates we're exposed to. He's almost foolish in a way, and I love the Platonic and the Socratic dialectic of you know, just anything like that. To me, like I got into Hegel too, as a maybe like in my 20s, and his use of dialectic and applying that to history really interested me, and applying that to consciousness, that kind of thought really interested me, and so I really found a lot of that to be beautiful. And so those are my 10. And you know, there's so much literature out there. I mean, anything you're interested in, anything in the world that anybody's interested in, you can find books on it. You know, if you search, and it's fun. It's like being an archaeologist and uncovering, you know, some ancient bones and going, "Oh my God, I'm the only
Wow.
one that has found this." You know,
Wow,
it's
wow,
wonderful.
wow.
Yeah.
Amazing, amazing. Dustin Pickering. I was just so engrossed. I thought I was one of the audience. Thank you very much for staying a lifelong learner. Thank you very much for putting on the discipline to write book and also share review. But before you go on the show, I like you to leave your words. What would you say to this person who is going through a tough time? What would your last word be to this person who is yet to carve a niche for themselves? What would you say to that woman who is going through some of the toughest time right now? What would be your last word to the downtrodden and the dissatisfied people around the world?
Very good question. I think that developing meaning out of what you're experiencing and bearing with it and and facing it with an endurance, you know, you develops character in a lot of ways. It develops an understanding of things, and then during tough times, it's really the best place to start reading. Is one of the things that I find is a good it's a good place to really try to understand what's going on in your life. In my own life, I found that when I was troubled, I came to books, I came to music, I came to the arts, I came to develop a voice of my own. And so I would definitely recommend anybody who's facing a trials and tribulations, or any kind of travail, to just bear with it with as much character as possible, and try to make something of it that makes it greater than itself.
Wow, amazing, amazing. One more before you go. What would be your words to this person who is yet to read a book? This person who has all the ability, all the time in the world, but will spend this time to do something else. What would be your last words to people like that?
Just keep in mind that if you choose television or something boring over a book, you're depriving yourself of depth and of the knowledge that's there. That there's a lot of hidden knowledge that you won't see on TV that's in books. You'll find characters that are more human and more humane. You'll lose a lot of your own empathy. So if you choose something else, just pick up a book. Why not? It doesn't hurt. It takes a little time and effort to get used to it, but it's beautiful. It's a wonderful experience. It makes your days brighter, and it keeps you a company in a lot of ways. If you're a person who is lonely, you can relate to, if you develop imagination through reading, and learn to relate to the characters, and it helps you develop a mindset of understanding other people. So there's so much more in a book, so much depth, and a whole nother world that you won't find in other places. And I think it's beautiful, it's enriching, and it's a very humane experience.
Wow, amazing, amazing. Well, amazing. Are you there? Wow, if you're streaming this, we've been on to Dustin Pickering. Dustin Pickering has been on a spotlight and we have been having some amazing time. Don't forget that you become the book you read and the people that you meet. Dustin Pickering is one class example you can't afford to miss. Remember that you become the books you read and the people you meet. And Dustin Pickering has been a very great motivation on the spotlight. Dustin Pickering, thank you very much for honoring our Ivy. We look forward to see you on our global reading campaign and author store. We look forward to see you on our webinars, our Zoom meet and greet. And obviously, we are hoping that you will become one of the sponsors of this project to make a reader out of every global person. Thank you very much for representing so much. Thank you for being who you are. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, on the occasion of one student, one book, one author mantra, we had Dustin Pickering on our global reader circle. And don't forget that we are going to leave his Amazon link on a podcast note. And don't forget that we are going to feature Dustin Pickering during our global reading campaign. So you need to share the link and you need to tell your friends about a poet that every Christian and every manner of person needs to listen to. He's been your host, Smart Stewart Udo, on behalf of a global community. Thank you very much.